Hello, I'm Suzette Martinez Standring, and welcome to It's All Right with Suzette, a half-hour show on the craft of writing. And today we have a wonderful guest, Dr. Beth Kurland, who wrote the book, Dancing on the Tightrope, Transcending the Habits of Your Mind and Awakening to Your Fullest Life. And so we're going to spend the next half hour learning about practical mindfulness and the benefits of leading a fuller, more productive life by changing our thought patterns. So I would like to introduce her today to you. She is a licensed clinical psychologist, author, and public speaker in practice since 1994, working with people across the lifespan. She has a strong interest in whole person health and wellness and a passion for integrating mindfulness and mind-body practices into her work and her own life. She teaches people strategies for well-being, and she has an outpatient practice in Norwood, Massachusetts. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Beth Kurland. So, Dancing on a Tightrope. Give us an overview of what your book is about.
Sure. So I find it helpful sometimes to share 3 quotes that I think provide a little framework for the book. And the first quote is a quote by Richard Davidson, who was a neuropsychologist, a researcher at University of Wisconsin in Madison. And I heard him say in a talk that well-being is fundamentally no different than learning to play the cello. And so there's this idea that, to me, is very exciting. Over the past 10, 15 years, especially in the field of neuroscience and also the field of positive psychology and other areas within psychology, that well-being is really a skill that we can learn, practice, and cultivate, no matter what age we are, no matter our life circumstances, that we can actually get better at being able to bring more well-being into our lives. So that's the first quote. The second quote, and my book really talks about that, focuses on tools, practical tools that we can bring into our day, ones that don't take a whole lot of time, even, that we can use. So the second quote is a quote by a man named Jake Ducey, and he says that the greatest obstacles in our lives are the barriers our mind creates. And I found that really resonated with much of what I'm writing about, because I focus the first part of the book really looking at 5 mental habits or habits of our mind that we can get trapped in, we can get stuck in. I can talk more about those, but these 5 habits really evolved over millions of years ago to help our ancestors survive as a species. They're part of our brain circuitry, but they can get in the way of our well-being in our modern lives.
Yes.
And so that is one of the things I really delve into. And then this last quote, which is a Zen proverb, is that obstacles do not block the path, they are the path. And I really love that, because as we become aware of these mental habits that we get stuck in, they're no longer obstacles, but they actually become opportunities. So they become opportunities for us to work with them and to grow lasting inner resources for well-being, for resilience, for joy, for gratitude, for presence, for all of these qualities in our life.
Yes.
So.
You know, there is a large body of work that documents the ability of our mind to uplift our own spirit, to alleviate stress. And I think that Dancing on a Tightrope does a wonderful job of getting into the practicality of it, getting into the steps, getting into the mechanics of how the mind works. And you do, in your book, cover 5 core evolutionary challenges. So could you kind of go through the 5 kind of quickly?
Okay. So, and what I want to say about all 5 of these is that these all evolved in some ways to help us survive as a species. Think back to cave person times, you know, saber-toothed tigers and that kind of thing. So one of them was we have a false alarm, which is our stress response. And I call it a false alarm because back in the day, back in cave person times, it helped us to fight or flee from a predator. And in our modern day lives, our stress response shows up for most of us, you know, every day in some way. And the threats that we're facing most of the time in our lives are not ones for which fighting or fleeing are the most helpful responses. Sometimes the ways that we respond to stress is not always most beneficial in the circumstances.
But we're hardwired in a way.
We are, yes. And so it can be really helpful to begin to observe that response, not that stress is a bad thing, but to begin to work with it differently. So that's our first one. Then we have our stuck dial, which is this idea that I'm kind of simplifying the brain science here, but that in one mode of operation, we are fully present. We are focused, we're feeling alive in the moment with what's happening. But much of the time, we're not in that mode of operation. We're not present. Our mind is wandering. So we are in the past, we're in the future, we're in self-ruminative thinking.
That's so true.
And that's our stuck dial. Then we have the noisy person at the movie theater. So the noisy person at the movie theater is imagining you're sitting down, you're just trying to enjoy your movie, and somebody comes and sits right down next to you and gives you a running commentary of the whole movie. Oh my God, did you see what's going on? That's a disaster. Oh, this is not going to end well. And you have this, and it's the inner dialogue in our own head that gets in the way of our being able to fully enjoy our lives.
Distractions.
Yeah, the mental inner distraction, that inner dialogue that's often inaccurate, it's often self-critical, it's often not helpful with circumstances we're facing. Then we have the finger trap dilemma.
Yes.
And that is, I don't know if you've seen it, there's a little gag toy where you stick your fingers in, and the harder you pull to try to get them out, the more stuck you get. And it's counterintuitive how to get out. It's a little spoiler alert here, but you push your fingers in closer, which is not what you would expect to do, in order to release. And so it's this idea that we, as human beings, often turn away from our inner experiences, especially our difficult emotions that are uncomfortable. We feel sadness or anger or grief, and we try to distract ourselves. We try to get away from those emotions. But in fact, for much of the healing that I see working with patients over the past 20 years, that there can be something very powerful about learning how to be with and even turn towards and accept some of the difficult emotions that are there to be able to work through them.
Yes, I believe that.
Yeah. So our last challenge is the Velcro problem. And I like this one. Rick Hansen, who's a neuroscientist, a neuropsychologist, he says that the brain is like Velcro for the negative experiences in our lives and Teflon for the positive experiences. So the negative experiences, stick right to us, and those positive experiences can slip away like the slippery surface of Teflon. It's so much easier to hold on to the negatives in our day than to really notice these little positive moments that might just slip away. So those are, in a nutshell, those are these 5
They're 100%
challenges.
who we are. I mean, I identified with each of those: the avoidance, the distractions, the inner narrative. Oh, what are you doing? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And to address just for a moment, how you get deeper into the negativity, but to experience it, to feel it as a way of actually getting out of it. I think that is so powerful because I really believe, like, when you're feeling sad, just feel sad. Wallow in the sorrow. Really feel it, because that way you acknowledge it and you can move on. There's so much power to that. And I know you could talk a lot about that one aspect, but I love how you have gone through all those. Now, tell us about the common tools most people lack to experience life more fully.
So in the book, I talk about 5 tools that I share. I would say maybe one of the most common ones, and it's really the overarching theme of the book, is this idea of a flashlight. It's really a metaphor.
Yes.
But this mindful awareness that we often, I think, lack because it's not something we're taught as we grow up, as we go through school and so forth. And it's this ability to notice what's happening here in the present moment. And in terms of these mental habits, when we can notice that these mental habits are arising, then we have a little bit of space, we have a little bit of choice in terms of how we want to respond rather than reacting from our old patterning.
Yes.
And so it's that mindful awareness that I think can be so powerful in terms of giving us greater choice.
In your book, you talk about the ability to change that mind pattern. That, and I'm probably paraphrasing it wrong, so I would like you to, clarify more. But for instance, instead of saying it's awful, it's disastrous, it's terrible, to say I notice I'm thinking this. Can you talk a little bit more about changing the beginning of those sentences?
Yeah. So the I noticing is part of this mindful awareness, this ability to step back and notice the thoughts and emotions we're having rather than being swept away by them.
And declaring this is what it is.
Yeah. And so just as a really quick experiment, and people watching this can try this out. If I say a few phrases to you, I'm going to say them once and then I'm going to change them slightly. And I want you to be aware of what's happening in your body.
All right.
Okay. So, and as I say them, think about a situation that maybe is true in your life when you might say this kind of thing to yourself. So, so the first one, I'm so angry. I'm so anxious. I'm so stupid. And just notice how that resonates inside what happens when you think those things.
Angry, anxious, stupid. That's what you're filled with.
Yeah.
I'm filled with.
Okay. Now I'm going to change it slightly and say, I notice that I'm feeling a lot of anger in my body right now. I notice that I'm having a lot of anxiety in my body in this moment. And I notice that I'm having the thought that I'm stupid.
It really has a very almost feeling of being the observer. I am not the emotion.
Yes.
I'm just the outside observer going, oh, check you out. You're
Yes.
mad. You're feeling mad. And it kind of can lead maybe to more inner exploration as opposed to immediate discouragement.
Yeah, it gives it a little space.
A little
it's almost
space,
like taking
it
a half
does.
step back.
It does.
And you could see what's happening. It doesn't mean that those things disappear, but it gives you a little more ability to then work with it.
Yes.
To be able to.
And it's interesting because the Buddhists have a kind of a concept attached to detachment.
Yes, yeah.
Be the observer, detach. And
Yeah.
detachment can be a very, very powerful tool for being present in the moment and noticing how you feel.
Yeah, that we are not our thoughts, we are not our feelings.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Let's see. Oh, and another example of that in your book is in other instances of worry, to change the beginning thought to begin right now, can I be with this experience? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so our minds often go into the future. And I have to say, with all of these things, I teach what I most need to learn for myself also, so I find this one happens a lot. Worrying into the future things that may or may not happen. And so to be able to bring ourselves back to what's happening right here in this moment can be really helpful to get a little bit of space from that. I often talk with people about imagining that there are two boxes. And one box is what's happening in the present moment, and one box is all the things that you worry about, that your mind is going to thinking about. And often that present moment box is fairly small and manageable, and that future box is big and filled with lots of overwhelming thoughts. And if we can try to set aside that bigger box and really just look at what's here right now. What can I do today? How can I bring my thoughts back to what's happening here? And often there's actually safety in this moment. It's the worrying about something that hasn't happened that makes us most
That is so
anxious,
true.
yeah.
And I love the way that you rephrase the thought in, right now I am experiencing this. How can I be more fully in this experience rather than going into, gee, this is really nice, but gee, later on I have to go do that, this, and the other thing, and I'm not sure.
Yeah.
In a moment, we're going to return. We have to take a slight break, and then we're going to return with Dr. Beth Kurland, and she's going to give us some great advice on being present. Hi, and we're back with Dr. Beth Kurland, who's giving us wonderful examples of mindfulness and being more present and productive through her book called Dancing on a Tightrope. And where we last left off was where we were discussing how can we be more present in the experience, and rephrasing a sentence to start, right now I am experiencing this, and how can I be more fully in the experience, and allowing ourselves to put that other bigger box of, oh, but later on I have to do this. Oh, I'm under deadline. Oh, I'm not going to be able to finish that project. So that one can fully experience and savor the presence of the moment. But you wanted to add something that was a very important component to that.
Yeah, because sometimes the moment is difficult. And sometimes we are experiencing anxiety in our body, or anger, or sadness. And clearly there's a lot more I could say about this, but I do just want to highlight this point that one of the things I talk about in my book, and one of the things that I've really worked with a lot in my own life, is bringing an element of self-compassion to what we're feeling, and being able to, which helps us have a space to bear whatever is going on. That often there's a self-critical voice that says, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this, this is silly, push this aside. And to be able to talk with ourselves and be with ourselves the way that we might be with a good friend who's feeling sad, or a child, absolutely. That you wouldn't say, oh, that's silly, you shouldn't be feeling that way, but just really being present with ourselves to some of these difficult emotions that we experience. Learning how to do that.
When you say that, I think that self-compassion is something we put low on the totem pole, right? We eclipse ourselves, and we just allow other things to take priority. Can you give us an example of the inner dialogue of when you have to be compassionate towards yourself during very difficult and trying circumstances? What is the dialogue? What are the sentences that you say to yourself?
So I think, one of the things that I talk about, one of the tools that I refer to, is the diet, and feeding ourselves a healthier diet. And part of that is feeding ourselves a more self-compassionate diet, also feeding ourselves a more accurate and specific diet. So accurate as opposed to more distorted thinking, specific as what's happening right now versus more generalized. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you made a mistake. You did something that you feel badly about.
Okay.
And then, it was maybe an upsetting situation. So in and of itself, that's a hard situation. But then if you add on top of that, I'm so stupid, I can't believe I did that, people are going to think terribly about me, that really takes a difficult situation and makes it so much harder to bear, right? So being able to change some of that language to make it more self-compassionate, to also make it more accurate and specific, might be acknowledging, I'm upset in this moment. I recognize that I did something that I wish I hadn't, and I can acknowledge that this occurred.
Yes.
So being able to be honest about it, but then also being able to say, I'm human. And I can see this, if it was a friend that this was happening to, I could recognize, we all make mistakes sometimes. So being able to be kind with ourselves and be more specific, it was this moment, this circumstance, rather than I'm a failure, which is much more global and generalized.
And condemning.
So, yes, and self-critical.
So would part of the compassionate dialogue also be, well, I learned this, taking the lesson from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, being able to say that, sure, that this can be a learning experience. And so it's not Pollyanna thinking, oh, I'm wonderful, everything's great, and denying that the difficulty occurred. It's really acknowledging this is a difficult moment for me.
Yes.
And I can learn from it. I can see places where, maybe next time I can do something differently, but also not beating yourself up.
Yes. I often say education's expensive. And I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about the emotional toll it takes when you make a mistake. But that's where we learn. We learn from our failures.
Yeah.
And you're right. We tend to feel that our failures define us instead of looking at it from, all right, I've evolved because now I understand that is something I wouldn't want to do again, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, your book is really wonderful that way. It's very hopeful, very uplifting.
Thank you.
Now, when you talk about examples of easy to learn tools that can make us more resilient. Can you pick a couple and offer them up to us?
Yeah, I mean, so one is the diet, this diet of thoughts, really becoming aware of. A lot of our thoughts skirt under the surface of our consciousness. We talk to ourselves all day long, but we don't really realize we're doing that, and we're not listening to the things we're saying to ourselves. So some of it is learning how to feed ourselves a different diet of thoughts, or just even noticing, just the act of noticing, having that flashlight, going through the day and becoming aware of when we get pulled into these mental habits. Just the noticing itself is an invitation to come back, to look at what might be most helpful or needed in this moment. Just in terms of stress, I can think of for myself times when I get in my habitual mode of frantic, running around, trying to do too much, and being able to use that flashlight and feel what's happening in my body, and becoming aware of the tension, becoming aware of these thoughts of worrying about, oh my God, I've got all these things to do tomorrow and next week.
Right.
And it's that invitation then to come back to this moment. Another tool that I talk about is the magnifying glass, and I really like this one. That this idea which is really an antidote to the Velcro problem, that we can
sticking of negative thoughts.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Yep. So we can hold on to the negatives in our day. If one negative thing happens and maybe 10 positive things happen, which is the one you're gonna go home and talk about and be thinking about. So the magnifying glass is a way of carrying that, metaphorically into our day with us, and looking for these little positive moments that might otherwise slip away. And when we notice them, not just mentally registering it for, a second, but really taking maybe 30 seconds at least, or a minute. Rick Hansen talks a lot about this in his work on positive neuroplasticity, that we can actually change the brain when we do this, but really taking it in as a felt sense. So maybe calling up something positive that just happened, and just really closing your eyes and feeling that in your body, and feeling the positive emotions that may evoke.
Gratitude.
Absolutely. Gratitude is huge. So much research on how powerful gratitude is. Yeah.
Well, and you speak about the physical sensation of feeling gratitude, of magnifying those little mercies in the day that really we're not aware of, we overlook. I want to ask you about this. I have this little thing that sometimes I'm facing a very stressful day, and it's so easy to start the day with, I'm never going to get it done. Oh, this is going to be so hard. I'm not going to be able to reach that person.
Yeah.
And I did it this morning. I said, this is going to be a wonderful day. I'm going to get everything done so easily. People want to help me. And even though emotionally I didn't really believe it, I said it anyway. And I noticed that it's something I do pretty regularly, and darned if it doesn't actually shake out that way in a positive way. Can you kind of discuss the mechanics of that?
So that's a little bit what you're talking about in some ways, positive affirmations.
Yes, okay.
And I think the way that I look at it is, at any given moment, there might be 100 things we could be focusing on. So where are we choosing to put our attention, and what do we want to choose to magnify? So you could wake up and be thinking about, and I can resonate with that one, can get easily caught up in that. Oh my God, I have so much to do. How am I going to get this all done? That's that narrative. But being able to recognize that, where else might I want to put my attention, and are there little moments that I might magnify? And so can I find something that is happening right here?
Yes.
That's positive? Or, in your case, there's the example of even just projecting a more positive outlook, which often
declaring,
can then,
I'm going to have the time and people want to help me.
And often then it can become a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. We look for what matches our thoughts. So if we're, thinking negative things, we're looking at the world through that lens, we're going to see more negatives. If we are able to bring more of that positive, like the example you used, you're going to go into the day differently.
Well, that really makes sense, because once you declare it, you're looking for things to affirm it, and I do. I focus on, well, that really worked out.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. Now, I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about the importance of practicing new skills, you know.
Like anything else.
Like
right?
anything else. Like anything else.
Yeah. So, you know, I think that it's a matter of, going back to that first quote, well-being is fundamentally no different than learning to play the cello, that we have to practice working with these tools in order to begin to make lasting changes. And there's lots of ways we can do this. So this book really focuses a lot on these tools that you can really bring into your day with you. You don't have to set aside huge amounts of time to be able to do that. But as you become more mindfully aware, as you remember that flashlight, as you go into your day with the magnifying glass, paying attention to your diet, these kinds of things.
And by diet, you mean the inner
diet
narrative.
Of thoughts.
Diet of thoughts,
yep.
Yes.
So all of this, that it's a way of paying attention differently as we move through our day. And so in essence, there's a kind of informal mindfulness practice.
Yes.
That we don't have to necessarily sit on the cushion and meditate to be able to informally carry mindfulness into our day. But it is nonetheless something that requires some effort, that requires some intentionality.
Yes.
That we need to work at it. Certainly, I am a big advocate of bringing some kind of formal meditation practice into one's day, because I've just experienced the power of that myself, and I see from my patients how powerful that's been, and the research certainly substantiates that. So if one is interested in starting meditation, I think even small, even 5 minutes a day or 10 minutes a day, or 2 minutes a day,
yes,
can be important as a way to just begin to cultivate some of these skills.
Yeah, I believe everything you're saying, because it does take practice to suddenly realize, going in the wrong direction, pull that horse in. You know, we're going here. We're going here.
Yeah.
And you have to, and even the company that you keep, you start to notice, boy, these people are really negative, and you make a conscious effort not to answer the phone on that, or not engage, or not to fan those flames.
Yeah.
I mean, it all is a matter of practice and awareness.
Yeah.
We have about a minute and a half left, and
Okay.
I want to know where we can learn more about you and your book. Do you have a website?
Yeah. So my website is bethkurland.com.
And that's Kurland.
Right. Yep. And on that website, I actually have a bunch of free audio and video meditations that if people are interested in trying out meditation.
Free meditations on your website.
Yep.
Fantastic.
And I also have a bunch of meditations on Insight Timer, which is a free app. So that's another, but there's also many wonderful meditations. So anybody looking to want to get into meditation, there's all kinds of apps out there for sure. Also on my website are the other books that I wrote.
Yeah, please tell us. We have about a minute left.
Sure.
We want to hear, because you've won awards on
So these two books did, which I'm very honored about. The first is The Transformative Power of 10 Minutes, an 8-week guide to reducing stress and cultivating well-being.
Love it.
And that one is really filled with practical exercises. So for anybody who wants to delve into a real hands-on experience, there's 26 audio meditations that go along with the book, worksheets every day, and it's taking 10 minutes each day.
And the other book?
And the other book is Gifts of the Rain Puddle, Poems, Meditations, and Reflections for the Mindful Soul.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you, Dr. Beth Kurland.
Thank you.
We had a wonderful time with you. Please look up her book, Dancing on a Tightrope, Transcending the Habits of Mind and Awakening Your Fullest Life. And we will see you next time on It's All Right with Suzette. Peaceful evening.